good evening. You're most welcome to the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. Can we please be on our feet as the speaker and the chair take their seats? Kindly remember to put your phones on silent, please.
Please, you may resume your seats.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My job here this evening is to introduce the chairperson for the event. My name is Professor George Obinyejay, Honorary Secretary of the Academy. The President of the Academy, past Presidents of the Academy, Vice Presidents of the Academy, Fellows of the Academy, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, students, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Fellows of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, Ghana's premier learned society, I warmly welcome you all to this day 3 of the 58th in the J.B. Danquah lecture series. The J.B. Danquah Memorial Lecture Series was instituted in 1968 in memory of a foundation member of the Academy, Dr. Joseph Boakye Danquah, who, as we know, died in prison in February 1965, fighting for freedom in all its manifestations in our country. The lecture series consists of a series of 3 lectures delivered on varying themes. These have ranged from law, philosophy, literature, medicine and health, religion and nation building, among others. I'm also happy to announce that this event is being streamed live on the Academy's social media platforms, and we welcome all our virtual participants. We would like to acknowledge sponsors who have generously contributed to make this event a success. Professor Samuel Jesse Obin, FGA, Dr. Isaac Yao Jesse, North Shore Hospital, USA, Professor Emmanuel Obeng Jesse, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, USA, Professor Samilia Obeng Jesse and Dr. Rhea Malcolm, Ohio State University and the James Hospital, respectively, and Barnabas Obeng Jesse, medical student at Indiana University School of Medicine, USA. Let's kindly show our appreciation to our sponsors. Thank you. So now to my job function this evening, which is to introduce the distinguished chairman for the program. The chairman for this evening's event is the Vice President of the Sciences Section and member of council of the Academy in the person of Professor Alfred Oting Yeboah. Professor Alfred Apel Oting Yeboah is a retired professor at the University of Ghana. Professor Oting Yeboah has taught and trained many students in several African countries, including Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, etc. Our chairman is a passionate environmentalist and many other things. He wears many caps. He is known to have written and consulted extensively, as well as written many feature articles and published on the environment and biodiversity at both international and local levels. Professor Oting Yeboah has chaired many high-profile local, international environmental and biodiversity meetings. He's a founding bureau member and former vice chair representing Africa on the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform for Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. He has chaired the steering committee of the International Partnership for Satoyama Initiative, which is a joint UNU and Ministry of Japan initiative since its establishment in 2010. He chairs the trusteeship board of the Rocha Ghana, an NGO that advocates for nature and its conservation and sustainable use. Professor Oting Yeboah also chairs the Dropping Bolt Ghana board. He has received many awards and recognitions. He was awarded the 2014 International prestigious Midori Prize for Biodiversity and the John C. Phillips Memorial Medal for 2020, which is the highest global conservation award of the IUCN. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly, respectfully join me in welcoming our chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorary Secretary of the Academy. The President of the Academy, former Presidents of the Academy, Vice President Arts, former Vice Presidents of the Academy, Fellows of the Academy, Excellencies, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, students who I consider as our future leaders. It's a pleasure for me to take up the function of chairing the last in the series of lectures of the J.B. Danquah Memorial 2025. Now, this last lecture is expected to, or this evening's topic actually, is the last of the 2025 J.B. Danquah lecture series on the broad theme of language and liberty in Ghanaian political and judicial discourse. This last lecture is expected to uncover from an empirical inspection the intersection of language and liberty from 4 Gold Coast legal texts or discourses. I can tell you that we will look forward to another very stimulating lecture. Now I have the singular honor to introduce to you the speaker. At least he is not new to many of us, but for those who have just come in, it is important that I read his profile. Initially, I had intended to just read some abstracts of it, but upon second thought, I thought it would be prudent to read the full, because that is what will give us an in-depth knowledge about what he has been presenting since Monday on the Danquah Memorial Series of lectures. The speaker is Professor Samuel Jesse OBENG. He received his BA Linguistics from the University of Ghana, his Doctor of Philosophy from the University of York in England, specializing in language and linguistics science with emphasis on phonetics, phonology, and pragmatics, and a postdoctoral research training in linguistics in UCLA, which is University of California, Los Angeles. He held a full-time academic appointment at the University of Ghana and part-time appointments in the Ghana Institute of Journalism, Alliance Francaise, and the University of Cape Coast. From 1988 to 1994, he was a radio teacher for GBC's Everyday English program, and he also taught English language for JSS and SSS on GBC Radio. Professor OBENG joined Indiana University's Linguistics Department in 1994. He was tenured and promoted to Associate Professor in the year 2000, and then to full professor in the year 2006. In 2022, he was appointed a distinguished professor of linguistics by the Board of Trustees of Indiana University for his outstanding research and scholarship. Professor OBENG has directed the African Studies program between 2007 and 2015, and currently directs the West African Languages Institute and the newly established Indiana University Ghana Gateway as inaugural academic director. He has served as director of graduate studies, undergraduate studies, and also coordinated languages at Indiana University. A leading Africanist linguist, Professor Jesse OBENG is a pioneer researcher on phonetic resources unique in discourse participants in specific African interactional settings, and also a pioneer and leader in research on language and liberty, expression of liberty through linguistic speech in African political and judicial discourses. Professor OBENG is also a leader in onomasiology, where his work weaves together multiple languages to demonstrate the pragmatic and linguistic richness of anthropony and toponymy. He is a major authority on African pragmatics and discourse analysis. Professor OBENG has written 36 research books and edited volumes, co-edited 52 service edited journals, including special volume publications, 130 journal research articles, book chapters, creative writing articles, 17 book and article reviews, and currently has 14 monographic essays, 6 journal articles and book chapters, and 3 creative works in progress. Professor OBENG has won several important awards and honors, including being appointed Distinguished Professor by Indiana University's Board of Trustees, a a two-time Carnegie African Diaspora Fellow through the University of Ghana Carnegie Diaspora Linkage Program, distinguished research scholar, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, Association of Commonwealth Universities Scholar, McGraw-Hill Distinguished Scholar Award, and language specialist consultant for important publishers, for example, Oxford University Press. He is regularly invited as a plenary or a keynote speaker at conferences and as an external examiner and or evaluator for leading universities in Africa, in Asia, Europe, Oceania, the Americas, and the Greater Middle East. He has served as primary investigator for U.S. Department of Education Title VI grants, co-investigator for Department of State grants, and hosted over 30 Fulbright scholars from Africa at Indiana University. Professor Bing was the editor-in-chief of 3 internationally refereed journals, namely Africa Today, Issues in Political Discourse, and Issues in Intercultural Communication. Besides being a linguist, Professor Bing is also a poet, with 2 of his books of poems being A Nation in Crisis, published 2020, and Voices from the Graves, Words of Wisdom and Caution from the Departed, published 2008. He also writes short stories, with his most recent book titled Tales from My Ancestral Homeland, published by the African World Press. Professor Gyasi Obeng also writes political satire newspapers under different pen names. Professor Obeng was elected a Fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences in the year 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that we are going to be entertained, educated, and informed, particularly in this last section of his delivery. So on your behalf, I would like to invite the speaker, Professor Gyasi Obeng, to take us through this last bit, which I believe is going to be very, very interesting. Prof?
President of the Academy, past presidents of the Academy, Vice President, Arts, Vice President, Sciences, past Vice Presidents, Honorary Secretaries, Distinguished Fellows, chiefs, students, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Let me begin by expressing sincere appreciation to the Academy for the opportunity to present these lectures. I take it as an honor, and I deeply, deeply appreciate the opportunity to share some of my work. Today's lecture is going to be on language and liberty in J.B. Danquah's Politico-Judicial life. But before I do that, I want to very quickly go over the first two lectures to kind of help those who were not here to know where I'm going with this. Now, in the first lecture, I looked at the concept of the two concepts, language and liberty. And what I amplified, if I should use that word, was that both language and liberty are first and foremost cognitive experience. They are innate. I borrowed Plato's term, they are also intellected. With respect to language, what I said, and I'm going to be specific, was that it's a cognitive experience, it is innate, it is intellected, but it is actualized through speech. And I also mentioned that speech isn't just a community of sounds. If speech was a community of sounds, then if I were to pronounce the word OBENG, it would be oh. But that's not how it is. I pronounce it OBENG, which means besides the sounds, there are prosodic features, those of loudness, tempo, rhythm, and others. And these are kind of, they come together during speech. And I did mention the fact that, language, has several characteristics. I'm not going to go through all the characteristics, but what is interesting is that, when we talk about language, we're talking about not just the sounds and prosodies, we're talking about our ability to use it in social interaction. I talked about the fact that, if you look at language, dialect, idiolect, one of the things that linguists talk about is the fact, the principle of mutual intelligibility, which means that if I speak variety A, and you speak variety B, and if we can understand each other, then we speak in the same language. But if we cannot, then we speak in different languages. But then I also warned that many a time, it's not just linguistics, politics can play a part in it. And I give the example of the Scandinavian languages, which, to a great extent, are mutually intelligible, but they are said to be different languages. Whereas if you look at the Chinese languages, they are mutually unintelligible, but are said to be one language, one and the same language, because of their political system. I talked about language and the brain, and the fact that if part of the brain is diseased, if there's a disease of the brain, it can impair language. I spoke about Broca's aphasia, Wernicke's aphasia, and other kinds of problems that can come with speech. Now, I looked at language in various social domains like law, politics, education, religion, and others. On liberty, what I indicated was that, like language, as I've already said, it is a cognitive experience. We are born free. As humans, we speak of ourselves as Homo sapiens. We are wise. Homo loquens. We are the only species with language. Homo grammaticus. We have grammar. We call ourselves grammarians. And then to that I added Homo libertas. We are born free. And because we are born free, if we are oppressed in any way, we use language to resist that kind of oppression. I do talk about different types of liberty. I'm not going to go through all of that, but basically there's political liberty, legal liberty, health liberty. The fact that liberty is exceptional and universal. I did mention the fact that, different cultures may have different ways of dealing with it. But then, it is universal. Every human is born free. And so we react, in a way that is resistive. And then I during the second lecture, I looked at language and liberty from both the diachronic, and by diachrony I was referring to Ghana's historical perspective. Looking at the days of Danquah and Nkrumah, and those were the two political actors whose speeches I examined. And then I look at the synchrony, contemporary ones. I look at President Mahama and Vice President Bawumia, and look at how they use language, either resistive language or persuasive language, to communicate about liberty. Now, in doing that, one thing that I emphasize is that, the features that the linguistic and communicative features, the linguistic and discourse pragmatic features that I use in the enactment of or in the performance of, liberty, seeking liberty, it's not just a list, just a mere list. These are done together in a web of constellation. It's like an amalgamation of, all these things coming together. They clash and blend in a very interesting way. Now, today's lecture would be about language and liberty, how they interconnect, how language and liberty interconnect in J.B. Danquah's political and judicial life, or political-judicial life. In pursuing that concern, this is what I plan to do. I plan to examine how Danquah's choice of language allows us into his worldview, his view of reality. How can his words help us, give us a window of opportunity to look at his view of reality, and also the extent to which non-powerful actors can challenge the validity claims and actions of those in power. Harris had indicated that it is only those with power, who can do that. But then if we look at Ghanaian political discourse, and more especially if we look at J.B. Danquah's discourses, if I should use the plural, what we find is his ability to challenge the validity claims of those that he felt were oppressive in one way or the other. I would also look at how and the extent to which language, power, and liberty interconnect to ensure the protection of non-powerful actors, their liberty, that is, and also the language of power. This is very important. We're talking about resistance and all that. How about the language of power? Those in power, how do they use language to oppress those who are not in power? So at the end of it, I want to touch on the importance of language in Ghanaian jurisprudence, the importance of language in the Ghanaian bodies of laws or body of laws. What is legal discourse? I will not attempt to define it. I think I've said this a couple of times now, that, since 1987, I've never used a dictionary. And the reason I don't use dictionaries is that dictionaries give synonyms, and synonyms are dangerous. They're not helpful at all. If you, those of you who use dictionaries, you look up a word, and then you get about 10 different words. Take one of them, you get another 10, or maybe more. And so what it does is, it brings you back to where you began, and as I said, it's not very helpful at all. And most importantly, if anybody should ask me about the meaning of a word, what I always ask back is, what is the meaning of meaning? Meaning is very difficult to define. All right, so what is legal discourse? In looking at legal discourse, I'm interested in ways in which language and law inform each other in a judicial space. How language and law inform each other. How legal, legal procedures and proceedings and practices are reflected and shaped by language. Legal professionals' choice of vocabulary, phrases and sentences, and their impact on the judicial system. We always say this, don't we? Lawyers speak in a particular way. We don't understand what they say or what they mean. And it's because of the uniqueness of the language that they use. And then also, forensic linguistics. These days, I look at impressionistic phonetics, but my colleagues in computational linguistics, have been looking at enrollments, where they record someone's speech, and then it serves as reference for comparing other things, so that if the person spoke at another place, it can be used to determine whether it was the same speaker or it is the same speaker. It's like voice prints. Just as we have fingerprints, we have voice prints. So forensic linguists do that. And this is used as legal evidence. And then, of course, translation. In fact, a colleague of mine, Akuya, I don't know whether Akuya is here, she and I, there she is. She and I have been working on translation in contemporary Ghanaian courts, and it's kind of interesting how issues of power, solidarity, and the problem of translation, how they show up in the courts. Now, linguists' main aim in studying legal discourse is to try to understand the relationship between language and law, and the language of law or laws. What's the relationship between language and the language of laws? What kind of language is used by, say, Parliament when there's a bill? How about if the bill goes through committees? What kind of language is used to, if you like, refine it before it gets to be voted on and sent to the presidency for signature or for it to be returned? If it is returned, what kind of language is used to shape them? So, linguists are interested in that. We're interested in the language used in legislating, in the courtroom interactions. Also, identification and explication or explanation of physical evidence. We're interested in that. And then how language indexes, and it's indexed by courtroom organization. We look at quantitative speech dominance, for example. Who talks the most? And or who determines who speaks next? If you look at the courtroom or the court ecology, what you see is a contestation of power, as well as participants' unique linguistic and social capabilities. Those are very important. We also want to understand law as discourse. Here we analyze legal language from judicial participants' perspectives. Speaker intentions. Whenever there is any communication, any speaker or every speaker, we don't just talk as humans. There are speaker intentions, and we're also interested in what? The impact of what is said on other interlocutors, on other speakers. And those are also very important. The perlocutionary effect, if you like, on others. And then, of course, we also we are interested in legal language to get to the business of the courts. And we'll see some of that. What's the language of a warrant look like? How about a subpoena? How about sentencing? What kind of language is used? And of course, legal discourse helps us to understand how laws are made, what laws mean, that's how they're interpreted. So issues of interpretability and understandability are very crucial in legal discourse. How law works through language, legal processes, and the relation between the social foundations of law. I've talked about some of this already. So here are what I kind of seek to do, and I've said this before, so I'm just repeating myself. I'm interested in this lecture, how language and liberty intersect in Danquah's political-judicial life, and in perceiving this concern, this is what I've told you what I plan to do. I want to know the language he used in various legal ecologies. Sometimes it is legal and political ecologies that are kind of meshed, together, so to speak. Now, since I've stated the aims already, let me not repeat it. Now, method. This is the source of my data, a telegram by Dr. J.B. Danquah to the British Colonial Office in London on February 25th, 1948, about breakdown of law and order in the Gold Coast, and a request to constitute a constituent assembly to write a constitution for a sovereign Gold Coast. The second one is a warrant issued by Governor Creasy on March 12, 1948, for J.B. Danquah's arrest and detainment. The third is a letter by Dr. J.B. Danquah to Mr. Aiken Watson on April 15, 1948, on the Gold Coast draft constitution. And the final one is Dr. J.B. Danquah's letter to Prime Minister Kwame Nkrumah on November 4, 1959, on the prevalence of bribery and corruption in government. Theoretically, I'm kind of working within my own principle of language and liberty, and basically what this principle says is that, if we want to understand how language and liberty intersect, we have to look at issues of resistance, and how language, the importance or the relevance of language in this. Language ideologies is very important. The interlocutor's professional background is important. And they are political, and to that we can add judicial background and worldview. There are things like, as linguists, we're interested in even the way sentences are written. If we were dealing with the verbal component, we'd be interested in the phonetics and everything, but, since these are texts, I'm interested in the graphology. They do tell us a lot, as we'll see in a minute. How the author's linguistic and discourse pragmatic tools index and are indexed by the power forums, what do you call it, in the, am I doing the right thing? There you go. All right. So, and then, of course, anticipated real and political costs and rewards. When we speak, when anybody, especially in the court of law and also in politics, there are rewards and there are costs. So how much a reward does a person get for saying something? And what is the cost? The cost could be very significant. We know from Danquah's, the life, that it was the ultimate penalty, the ultimate cost. Death is what he had. So the cost can be very considerable. So, I wanted to say something very briefly. I didn't do this in the first two lectures, but I wanted to say something very briefly about Danquah. This is something that we can pull very easily from several sources, and I'm not going to read it. Basically, he was born in 1895, and his family, the family to which he was born, has been very prominent in Ghanaian politics. The fact that if you look at what Ghanaians refer to as the Big Sis, you have three of them coming from that family. So it's a very important political family. And then, of course, former President Akufo-Addo, has also become part of that. So it's a very prominent family into which he was born. He studied philosophy. And, of course, if you read his work, you can tell the good philosopher that he was. And his doctoral dissertation, and I like the title a lot, The Moral End as Moral Excellence. Moral End as Moral Excellence. That speaks for itself. One thing about Danquah was that he's a Pan-Africanist, and as a student in England, he became interested in politics and actually started a newspaper that became the mouthpiece of the, the liberation struggle eventually when he left and came to Ghana, joined with Alfred Grant and other people, the chiefs and other lawyers, to form the United Gold Coast Convention. He was a leading member of that. Now, other leading members of the UGCC, it's important for me to mention them, R.A. Awono Williams, Edward Akufo-Addo, William Oforiatta, Alfred Grant, Emmanuel Obechebe Lamte. Nkrumah returned to the Gold Coast on December 10, 1947, at the invitation of the UGCC to become his general secretary. In 1948, Danquah, Nkrumah Kufuor, Bishop Lamte Akwege, and Ofuriatta were jailed for a month by the British colonial authorities for leading the boycott of European imports and inciting, I put inciting in parentheses, riots in Accra. The Working Committee, referred to Danquah as the Doyen of Gold Coast politics, and Encyclopedia Britannica refers to him as the Dean of Ghanaian nationalist politicians. All right, so let's look at the telegram that I mentioned. On February 25, 1948, with approval of the Working Committee of the United Gold Coast Convention, Dr. J.B. Danquah sent a telegram to the British Colonial Office in London to inform them of the breakdown of law and order in the Gold Coast. Danquah requested an immediate action to hasten the Gold Coast's desire for immediate political liberty to enable it to self-govern. There was boycott of European shops and a strike by workers for just treatment. A group of air servicemen marching to the seat of government at Christiansborg Castle to present a petition to the governor, were confronted by colonial office police, and the police officer, Police Superintendent Imre, opened fire at the peaceful protesters, killing some and injuring others. Sound familiar? Now, Danquah saw the incident as an intrusion on the legal, political, and moral, as well as civil liberty with the people of the Gold Coast. He sought to initiate redress via his telegram to the colonial office in London. He criticized the inexcusable and unbearable oppressive acts of the Creasy administration, called for immediate political and judicial remedy, and was subsequently asked by Mr. Aiken-Watson to draft a constitution for the Gold Coast, which Danquah did and submitted to him on April 15, 1948. Now, Danquah called it the skeletal outline of the Constitution because he knew that he alone couldn't write a Constitution, and that an entire body had to look at it and do this and that, to make it presentable, if you like, and to be voted on. Now, ideas expressed in the telegram formed an important foundation of the Gold Coast independence. Now, let's look at some of the the characteristics or linguistic things that you find in the telegram. Normally, telegrams, so this is general for telegrams. Telegrams contain content words, such as nouns, main verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and functional words like prepositions, conjunctions, and stuff like that tend to be minimal. You're communicating important messages, and what you're doing here is to make sure that it's only the words that, linguists call them content words, important words, that appear on it. Of course, the danger with telegrams is that there's a possibility of a message not being processed and as intended by the author. Of course, less time is needed in sending and reading telegrams. And also, from the linguistic pragmatic perspective, telegrams tend to contain urgent messages that need immediate attention and response of action. They're perceived as formal and faster. All right. Now, here are some texts that I've kind of taken from the telegram. The telegram is very long. It's about 2 pages, which is long for a telegram. There's a use of content words mainly for expressing absence of legal and political liberty. Here's an example. Civil government, Gold Coast. Civil government, Gold Coast, broken down. Okay, so those are the important words there. Police unable to protect life and property. Now, this one has to and end, but then most importantly, what we're seeing here is the use of the content words, as I said. Now, breakdown of law and order and consequent intrusion, intrusive impact of the businesses. Those people with shops, had problems. People were looting. And, there were problems. People had to close their shops. So, in a way, there was intrusive. To use Isaiah Berlin's terminology, there was the negative liberty, which is the, because of government action, the freedom to do what they want to do was not allowed. They couldn't, sell as they wanted to, and that's positive liberty. So the intrusion by government, was negative liberty, according to, if we want to use Isaiah Balanced terminology. Now, what we see in Danquah's telegram is delegitimization of the crisis administration by negative order representation. We'll see some of that in a minute. Or even if we read this, what they call 3 lines here, deep-seated roots of disorder and lawlessness set aflame by unprovoked massacre of civilians and unarmed ex-servicemen by shots fired by police Superintendent Imre against peaceful procession. Ex-servicemen to present petition to governor on the distressing condition and post-war neglect. So here what you see is what? Negative order representation. He presents the governor as being negligent, as not being, responsible. And then also we see delegitimization. If you cannot do your job, then you have no business being here. So it is carefully, those vocabulary, the words are carefully selected. The syntax is done, the grammar is done in such a way as to pinpoint, the problems that were there, that they were facing. There's blame assignment, and there's the use of metaphors. We've talked about metaphors for so long. Now, so Governor Chrissy's egregious crime is amplified by Danquah. Danquah explains how the ex-servicemen followed the law by working with the police commissioner on the routes the march took, and the fact that the ex-servicemen were unarmed and peaceful. So again, I'm not going to read it. It's kind of interesting. I've underlined ex-servicemen marched orderly, completely unarmed. Riot act, not red. The Riot Act, this was a British thing where, if there was riot, the police would have to read the act to tell you to disperse within an hour. And if you didn't and you were arrested, in fact, in extreme cases, you could face a death penalty. And this was abolished in 1973 in the UK. But yes, the Riot Act was not read, and Danquah kind of mentioned it. Danquah expressed the intrusion on the legal and political liberty of the people of the Gold Coast and called for immediate restoration of their liberty. Here I've underlined oppressed, inarticulate, misruled, misgoverned. When you read those words, but the negative other representation. We ask in the name of the oppressed, the inarticulate, the misruled, and misgoverned people and their chiefs that special commissioner be sent out immediately to hand over government to the interim government of chiefs and people and to witness immediate calling of constituent assembly. So, Danquah was telling them, hey, you know what? This governor is not doing his job. Recall him, give us liberty, and we can do it. Danquah emphasized the governor's oppressive and shallow administration. Again, I don't have to read all of it. But, if we look at the text, what we find, and again, I've used the word intertextuality so many times, what we find is reference to history. He says, inheritor of aftermath of Governor Alan Burns' oppressive and window-dressing administration. Governor Burns' administration was shallow. It wasn't the best. And Chrissy has done nothing to improve upon it. Then there is agency. The perpetrator of the illegal political and moral liberty act is incapable of acting justly and or giving redress. Another agent is sought to provide justice, redress, and restore normalcy. So what Danquah basically, through language, is saying, you know what? There is a breakdown in law, breakdown of law and order. This gentleman is incapable of handling the situation. Recall him, bring someone else. There's also legal and political liberty issue that is amplified here. We speak in the name of inherent residual sovereignty in chiefs and people in free partnership with British Commonwealth. So here, Danquah is again emphasizing, the need for liberty, so to speak. Now, Danquah affirmed the breakdown of law and order with the stretch, the souls of Gold Coast people slaughtered in cold blood upon Castle Road, crying out loud for vindication in cause of freedom and liberty. Now, here you see, metaphors here. You see tons of metaphors, being used here. Souls of Gold Coast people slaughtered in cold blood. You hear the word slaughter, it's a physical verb. It's a verb that denotes physical sensation. So what Danquah is saying is that something egregious is happening, something really bad is happening, and a redress is needed. He invited the king and the British Parliament to take his message seriously and act with lightning speed with the expression, let king and parliament act without delay in this dire hour of Gold Coast people and their chiefs. So again, what we see is his call for remedy. All right. Now, thank you so much. Now, Danquah closes with God save the King, Florid United Gold Coast. The expression God save the King and Florid United Gold Coast has both a political and legal underpinning. The United Kingdom's national anthem, of course, we know, is God Save the King, depending on, whether the monarch is headed by a male or female person. So if it's the female, it's God Save the Queen. Now, recognizing the crown suggests Danquah was neither acting against the law nor planning an insurrection. The expression Florid United Gold Coast has both legal and political implication. It is a recognition of the denial of the people of the Gold Coast, their liberty from and their liberty to, and a request for sovereignty. And liberty from, liberty to, Sir Isaiah Berlin. Now, let's look at this Governor Christie's warrant for J.B. Danquah's arrest. And I will leave it on. Let's see if I can. Oh, okay. If you can make it broader so that everybody can see. Now, the first line of the warrant is written in uppercase letters to signal, that is a title, for emphasis and for attention getting. Use of initials, JB, in the title of such an official document could encode familiarity with the fact that J.B. Danquah was known to the Ghanaian population and the colonial officers, or it could be a taunt. The actual warrant begins with the legal vocabulary, whereas, I think we mentioned this the first day at the first lecture, to introduce and explain the background context for the rest of the document. It points to and explains the reasons or motivations for the warrant issuance. Now, there is an expediency and reasoning behind the removal order against Danquah. So Governor Christie securing public safety and maintenance of public order. The legal discourse features that we find is first, there's intertextuality. He cites provisions of the criminal code. He cites provisions of the criminal code. The structure, the entire first paragraph is constituted by a single sentence. There's presupposition. The expression securing public safety and maintenance of public order presupposes that Danquah may have caused an action that threatened public safety and caused disorderly conduct or behavior. Now, the removal order, if you like, was a punishment, if you like, for Danquah for breaking the law. Danquah's seeking of liberty was interpreted by the governor as breaking the law on public safety and causing public disorder. His actions were punishable, if you like, apprehension and detainment against his will in a place determined by the governor, a denial of his negative liberty and positive liberty. The second paragraph begins with a statement of the qualification and hence the source of authority that the governor had, and that made him justifiable, his action justifiable and justly in the language of the text, the one apprehending Danquah. Use of intertextuality, whereby the governor cites regulation at which it confers the power, if you like, upon the governor and kind of justifies. Now, what's interesting here is this. He says, now in exercise of the powers conferred upon me by the said regulation 29 of the above regulations and in pursuance of regulation, such regulation. Now, here's the one I want us to pay attention to. I do hereby make this order and direct that the said Joseph Boache Danquah shall be apprehended and detained, and that he shall be removed from custody as soon as may be to such place in the Gold Coast as I shall hereafter appoint by directions under my hand. So, and I'm not moving this because I just want you to kind of focus on that. The fact that he uses uppercase letters in I do hereby make this order, that has a perlocutionary effect. When we speak, our words matter. Our words can have an effect. It can have an impact on the addressee or the patient in this particular case, Danquah. So this one has a perlocutionary effect of causing the patient, Danquah, getting apprehended with his liberty curtailed. The order encodes a command with the auxiliary verb do, I do hereby, and the main verb make, having the power to get the governor's order carried out. And the verb direct encodes a forceful action by the agent, the governor, upon the patient, Danquah. The word hereby, I do hereby, the word hereby gives the time as now, the time the warrant was issued. By his words, the legal action of both the political and social implications are taken. I'm quoting from Cyril and Austin here. With your words, they get things done. Now, and again, I do hereby order, and require that the said Joseph Boache Danquah, from the time of his removal to a place to be appointed by me, and so long as this order continues in operation, shall at all times, A, remain and live in and not leave or be absent from the place to be so appointed by me. Comply in all respects with such directions and requirements as I may issue anytime. Basically, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that, by his words, if you take a word like compel, it means the guy, J.B. Danquah didn't have an option. You're forced to be where the governor wants you to be. And then you have to stay there until he tells you or he orders that you can be out of that place. Now, this order may be cited as the removal, Joseph Boache Danquah order, 1948, and shall come into operation on 12th day of March, 1948. So here we have history, we have politics, we have language, all intersecting, to reflect on the curtailment of Danquah's liberty. The last paragraph begins with the noun phrase, this order, and I'm going to take you with me. All right. This order, all typed in uppercase letters to emphasize the authority and hence the power inherent in the order and in the agent, the governor, issuing it. The governor says the nature of and status or power of the removal. He inserts the name of the person or target of the warrant, Joseph Boakye Danquah, between a removal and order for clarity and to avoid ambiguity. I'm not referring to anybody, I'm referring to anybody other than Danquah. He repeats the order number, 1948, to authenticate, specify, and justify the order thus issued. The governor ends the warrant by specifying the time the warrant would come into operation with the expression, shall come into operation on the 12th day of March 1948. This is followed by the agent's name, Gerald Creasy, and his title, governor. Now, basically, what I've kind of said, everything I've said thus far, all that I'm saying here is that a warrant is an institutional discourse in nature. It's an institutional text in nature. It's a legal text that encodes power asymmetry between the agent, in this case the governor, and the patient. Now, the language used in the warrant brought to the fore the intersection of language, law, liberty, and power. Issuance of the warrant by someone other than the governor would have made the warrant infelicitous. Now, here is a letter that J.B. Danquah wrote to Aiken Watson on the Gold Coast Constitution. It's a very short one. I will leave it for you to look at as I discuss it. Here are some structural characteristics. There is the addresser and addressee's title and offices. The addresser's office, Yadom Chambers. It identifies his profession, a recognized jurist, lawyer, thereby giving judicial importance and authority to the document, a constitution. Aiken Watson had told J.B. Danquah to draft a constitution and to bring it to him, and so he did it and sent it to him. The addressee's name, Aiken Watson, Esquire, KC. I think we talked about these. What do you call it? Abbreviations. You know, he directs attention to both his political office and the legal authority that he has. From the point of view of graphology, both are written in uppercase letters to signify their political and legal import in the Gold Coast political and judicial ecology. You know, KC obviously means King's Counsel. This was a terminology that was used for barristers, lawyers, who were seen as having done very well and were respected by the king or the queen and given responsibilities. And Esquire, as we said the other day, is what do you call it? ESQ is Esquire, which means in the past it meant men who were above gentlemen but below knighthood. They were below knight, but then it's used these days to after the full name of a lawyer, you know, you put Esquire there. Now, graphologically, what we see is that both are written in uppercase letters to signify their political and legal import in the Gold Coast or political ecology. I think I've mentioned that already. Now, use of abbreviations, I've talked about that already. Yes, and then the salutation is Sir. The salutation details the high status of the political power of the addressee and points to the formal or official nature of the missive. The letter is composed of 3 paragraphs. There's an opening. This serves as both a pre-announcement and an announcement. I think I did kind of explain this, and a pre-announcement is any utterance that comes before the real announcement or before an announcement is made. We have structurally, it is in response to, now this is very interesting and I want you to kind of look at it. In response to your pregnant request of yesterday to supply you with a draft constitution, that's a metaphor right there, isn't it? I mean, a request being pregnant. That tells you, it talks about the importance of it. Now, it prefaces, I feel like, prepares the way for the announcement. I have the honor to enclose the schemata herewith. In response to this, I have the honor to include it. Now, here we do have intertextuality. The opening serves as an intertextual reference to a discussion or a request made by the addressee, Akin Watson, Esquire, KC, for the addresser, J.B. Danquah, to undertake a certain task, that is providing a draft constitution. Discursively, Danquah's description of the request with the adjective pregnant is both linguistic, political, and legal. It has significance in all these areas. The second sentence, naturally, the draft cannot contain more than an outline. The details left out to be filled by the Constituent Assembly. Now, the word naturally is a factive formula. Basically, it's saying it invites the addressee to accept the content of the document naturally. This is something that we all know. It's like saying, as you very well know, as we know very well, or however you want to put it. Now, there is some semantic density in here. The stretch fill-in is an idiom that points to the addressee, to the fact that it is only after a constituent assembly or the lawmakers engage in the legislative business of discussing and passing it that then it becomes a law of the land. I mean, one person cannot write a constitution. The second paragraph, I need hardly say that the outline represents my own ideas and has not the approval of the Working Committee of the United Nations Convention. I need hardly say, it's idiomatic here. Now, I see author sincerity here. It points to the author's sincerity, his understanding of law, due diligence, and the constitution of order, and principles that must guide Goku's important and essential decision about the tenets of a constitution and acts of constitutionalism. It draws Akin Watson's attention to the framework involved in coming up with or establishing a constitution that ensures justice and democracy in the Ghanaian society and defends the liberty, if you like, and the rights of persons, of individuals. I mean, if he had said, for example, that, this is it, let's vote on it, that would have been seen as an act of arrogance, and I don't think anybody would have accepted it anyway. That's why he was careful in speaking of it as being skeletal and stuff like that. The third paragraph, I trust your commission will do something for us to bring this land prosperity and happiness. At present, things are not what they should be. Now, if you look at the point of view, if you look at it from the point of view of graphology, both clauses are syntactically sentential in nature. I trust your commission will do something for us to bring this land prosperity and happiness. That's sentential, isn't it? It is a sentence. And then at present, things are not what they are or what they should really be. Now, one could say, looking at it, we say, oh, well, there's a typo, it should have been a full stop. No, it is done intentionally here. It's neither a typo nor a mechanical error. It has pragmatic significance. It points to an unfinished business. The comma there points to an unfinished business. The fact that things are not going well for the people in the colony, that the intrusion on the people's liberty and the need for independence is requested. The expression to bring to this land prosperity and happiness, and at present things are not what they should be, they should really be, provide credence and gives further indication to Danquah's focus of drawing attention to the denial of the people of the Gold Coast their negative and positive liberty. The letter closes with, I am, sir, yours very truly. Discursively, we have agency and closeness. I mean, the expression I am emphasizes the agent performing the action. The one writing the letter. The first person singular pronoun is the agent, and the copular verb am gives emphasis to the agency of the action. We also have status asymmetry by the use of the word sir. There's also the formulaic expression, yours very truly, Well, in sum, what we find with this one is that Danquah was able to complain about the denial of liberty, the people of the Gold Coast, and to ask for political and legal remedy. I mean, he was asked just to send a draft constitution, but then he didn't just send a draft constitution. His letter had both legal and political import as they relate to liberty. Here is the fourth one, and hopefully will be done very soon. This is J.B. Danquah's letter to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah on bribery and corruption. If you can make it a little bigger, I will let you guys see it. You see it as I discuss it. Now, this letter has unique discursive structure and legal and political content. Structure-wise, each paragraph consists of one sentence only. And that's very important. I mean, I found this consistently in quite a number of legal documents. I mean, a point is made, it's in one sentence. What I said to myself is, that's very much unlike me. I mean, I can write a sentence that's almost a paragraph, So I probably wouldn't be a good lawyer. But, here, what I see is that each paragraph consists of one sentence only. The salutation, dear Dr. Nkrumah. And the formality, he says the scene. One would have thought that, because he and Nkrumah were on first name basis, they'd gone to prison together, they knew each other very well, he could have said, dear Kwame. But then he didn't do that. He used the formal, salutation here. And I see some tension there. I see some tension there. And so it's kind of interesting, and there's also distance. I'm writing an official letter, and so I'm going to use dear doctor instead of dear Kwame or Kwame. Now, so the formulaic, we also have another factive here. It's kind of interesting. It ought to be quite clear by now. Wouldn't it be funny if Nkrumah said, no, it's not clear? If someone says it ought to be quite clear by now, the assumption is that it's there for everyone to see. This one forces the addressee, Nkrumah, to accept the part of the sentence following it. It encodes awareness or knowledge of the complement clause. And here it is, that the practice of ministers, commissioners, high, regional, or district, and other political agents of the government taking presents of money or gold or kente or in kind from members of the public, including chiefs, is not healthy and does not inspire a decent public life. Maybe he was a prophet. The complementers at that introduces the complement clause and the mood associated with it. He talks about contravention of law. But the above sentence, one observes Danquah's appropriation of language to point out behaviors and acts that contravene the nation's laws, bribery, and corruption. He also talks about lack of moral decency. The sentence encodes lack of moral decency in Ghanaian public life. If everybody is taking some bribes, that's a problem. Maybe you've looked at it enough. Can I take you with me? I'm going to... Oh dear, I left you further, didn't I? All right. Now, request for restoration of law and order. Danquah's sentence, I should be happy if your cabinet would issue orders to stop it. Otherwise, corruption and fraud will never abate in this land. And its increasing pace will eat into all aspects of our public life, even the civil service. Here, this one is a request couched in a plea for the executive to remedy the illegal situation. Corrective action, it was anticipated. Danquah believed that if corrective action was taken, corruption and fraud would abate. Fraud and stealing are becoming rampant, even at the post office. and in the police force because people see other people making cheap gains elsewhere. So here, he's talking about difficulty in governance. The fact that, some of us are old enough. In fact, my first savings, was at the post office. The post office was the place where you took your money, to save it. And so if there was corruption there, then there was a problem in terms of commerce. And then also the judicial system being at risk because, and I don't know whether that's still the case, because there aren't enough attorneys, there aren't enough lawyers. The police also act as prosecutors, and so if that is the case, and if there's corruption there, then you can imagine its impact on defendants. So Danquah was kind of hitting on a very big problem that was going on. The illegal financial gain. People make cheap gains. Now, what he was implying here is, look, if I see somebody making cheap money, under normal circumstances, I'm also going to make something there. So here was a call, if you like, to say, you know what, Dr. Nkrumah, put things in order. Incorruptibility, a condition and a qualification for those who wish to serve in responsible positions. What Danquah is saying is that if you want to serve in such a responsible position, then don't do it. So this country can only prove itself fit to govern itself if those primarily charged with that governance first set the supreme example of incorruptibility. Danquah held that corruption and fraud point to a nation's inability to self-govern. And that's a very big point here. Corruption and fraud point to a nation's inability to self-govern. It implicates, if you like, unreadiness and a disqualification from holding political leadership position. And it also points to inability to ensure political, legal, and moral liberty. So here are my general conclusions. And these are general conclusions for what we call all the lectures. As humans, what I've argued is that we're born with language and liberty. We take them as immutable and hence unchallengeable and protect them. Besides language, it is liberty and justice for all that sets humans apart from other primates. Resorting to oppressive behavior not only intrudes the liberty of dominated actors, but it is also catastrophic for a nation's moral values on good governance, its law and order, and its humanity. Sir Isaiah Berlin's call for a compelling and formidable value to be attached to the defense of negative liberty and the protection of individual autonomy should be the backbone of Ghana's young democracy. We're very young as a nation. One might think that we're old at 67 or thereabout, but we're very, very young compared with other developed democracies. If you form the base of our young democracy, if we want to hold on to our democracy and keep it, and I'm referring to Professor Justice Datiba, as Dr. J.B. Danquah taught us through his letters and speeches, letting go of liberty with a view to achieving self-interest against the common good results in dictatorship and loss of one's own liberty. As a nation, I recommend that we must be guided by political and moral thinking based on liberty, equality before the law, political and social equality, individual rights, consent, this is very important, consent of the governed, pluralism, open-mindedness, and sovereignty. Now, I'm not just throwing these words around. These are words that I think that I hold dearly to, and I think they are interconnected. Governments must not be allowed to wield so much power as to obliterate the power of the individual. Individual social and cultural relationships with the commune are essential to and even support their being. But this must not lead to a situation whereby the commune rules over and overwhelms the individual's existence and personal liberty. We saw that, in quite a number of places, including Ghana. At independence, the tendency, and as I said the other day, we know what Stalin did. In communist Russia, we know what Mussolini did in fascist Italy. The community is because the individuals are. The obverse is neither palpable nor acceptable. Oftentimes we speak of ourselves as, being, what do you call it? What's the word for it? I mean, we are not individualistic, we are communal and all that. But there's this cheap proverb, "Abusua te se kwaye, uwe chere bomutu na pin hu a na hu se dua bia woni sibre." The commune or the lineage or the town or the community, if you like, it's like forest. When you stand from afar, it's like one unit. But when you get close to that, that's where you see each plant, each shrub, each whatever occupying a particular space. Individual space, it is the individuals who come together to form the commune. And without the individuals, there is no commune. And if we're going to work on our liberty, it must start with individuals. It must start with persons and individuals. Persons, that's official, individuals like us, if you like. Now, as a nation, I recommend that we must be guided by political and moral thinking based on liberty, equality before the law. I think I've read this already. Governments must not be allowed to wield so much power. The commune is, or the community is, because individuals are. My approach to political and judicial discourse analysis was influenced by analytical methodologies from linguistics, law, politics, political science, to anthropology. I never claimed to be an anthropologist, neither did I claim to be a jurist or a political scientist. I've emphasized this a million times. Language is my profession, and I look at how language is used in the enactment, in the performance of, law and politics. There was a need to focus on the mechanisms and procedures by which interactional participants engage in social interaction, constructed, deployed, oriented to reshape the interactional sequencing, engage in correction, protested, criticized others, summoned others to appear before courts of competent jurisdiction, accepted parties' nominations. Of considerable import in these lectures is this lecture's demonstration that on the intersection of language and law as it relates to liberty, the course written texts are intended to capture the legal tasks involved. What the written messages are intended to communicate to and about the courts and to the recipients of such text liberty. I argued that the presumption behind legal text, be it a warrant or a subpoena, is the accuracy of the record. That's very important. And the reason why accuracy is important is, some cases go on appeal. And if the text is not properly done, it can change the results of the appeal. It can change the results at appeal. So the accuracy is very important. Their elocutionary acts and their perlocutionary effect on intended recipients. We may have different political views, and I think we do, and judicial theories, and we do. But liberty is common to all of us. Political and judicial differences are essential in nation building. We are not like sheep. I told you I was a herder. Sheep, they all go the same way. If you have goats, they go their different ways. But don't we call our children kids? We don't call them lamb. What must not be negotiable is attack on liberty. If we take it as given that liberty is unalienable to our being and our human experience, then impediments to its actualization must be uncovered and eradicated. Those in power ought to give up something for the liberty of the dominated. And I will end with Isaiah Berlin's quotation, which I've quoted. This will be the third time. Freedom for the pike is death for the minnows. The liberty of some must depend on the restraint of others. Thank you very much. And I like showing off my family. Oh, he doesn't have it. That's all right. There we are. That's the unit. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would be kidding myself if I attempted to summarize what the lecture has been. But before I make some reflections, I would like us to show an appreciation, a huge one. You know, I have been lucky to chair the last component of the series. And in doing that, I have had an opportunity to look back. And I'm actually going to refer to a statement that was made by Steve Jobs of Apple fame. He said, "You cannot connect the dots while looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward." And that's exactly what I'm actually going to do, because I have had an opportunity of listening to, I would say, reflections from my president, from my colleague, Vice President Arts, who chaired the first and second series. Some of the decisions that I have made, which I would like to share with you, I want to begin by indicating that language is a serious matter. Language is not easy at all. If it were not, I wonder whether Ghanaians will be grappling and searching for the usual statement. Any translations when a French-speaking colleague starts to speak. Language is not easy. Another thing that I am making observation on is the number of linguists that we have in the country is limited. And maybe my colleagues from the University of Ghana, who are colleagues of Professor OBENG, will listen to that fact of helping us to get more linguists. Why am I saying this? You see, liberty as a concept actually is sacrosanct. And we should not make any attempt to toy with it. Your liberty and my liberty, I think, stop when our noses come closer. See, people's choice of words, either from a cultural perspective or using idioms, or from a philosophical, medical, psychological, biological, spiritual, all the various areas of human endeavor. All of these connote knowledge. They connote knowledge. And of course, as far as we know, knowledge can be studied and acquired. Knowledge can be experienced. Knowledge can be worked with. And therefore, one would say that knowledge is exclusive. From Monday through yesterday to today, there is a term which emerged quite frequently: actors. And here, the reference was actually to political actors, drama actors, and others who are in different human endeavors. All of them speak the same language because they understand one another. And in that case, we say that they are communicating. So there's no barrier. They may agree or disagree, that's fine. But that is purely a human choice or a personal choice. On the other hand, when they do not speak the same language, then you can find that there is a limitation, there's no communication. And the next would be, if you like, fisticuffs, because we don't understand one another. Now, a discourse such as has been provided here by the speaker in the 3 very impressive lectures, who, I'm referring to the speaker, who is neither a political or a judicial actor. He has attempted to underscore the value of the linguist in interpreting and shaping opinions that have been expressed by political and judicial actors, though at a latent stage. For me, I think Prof. OBENG has actually done a wonderful service to our community today, and I want to ask for another applause. What I have observed, that in this discourse, which Professor OBENG the last 3 days has given us, he has gone behind the lines and the thoughts of past and present Ghanaian political leaders in order to lay bare before us their search, that is innate search for liberty for the people of this country. Now, the intricacies of whether their messages were heard and understood, whether their messages were heard, understood, and ignored, whether their messages were heard and misunderstood, or not heard at all. This is very significant. And in each of these phases, the concept of language and liberty has prevailed in the discourse which our learned professor has given to us. I am actually intrigued by the JBA Danquah quest for the rule of law to prevent, or for the rule of law in order to prevail. He made this call 3 different occasions. And what we note is that in all of these 3 different occasions, to the governor at the time, to the chairman of the Commission of Inquiry, and to the prime minister of the country at the time we have turned and become Ghana, all of these requests were ignored. So, in a situation like this, the respondents either would say that they did not pay any attention to what Dr. Danquah was saying, or they found him as a nuisance, or they just completely ignored him because they found him as a troublemaker. I think that Professor Bing has done justice to the topic which he has presented to us the last 3 days, Language and Liberty in Ghanaian Political and Judicial Discourse. To our audience, and particularly I'm referring to my young people to my right here and also over there, we want to look at you as our future. And what I would like to tell you, I mean, you have heard from the speaker himself, but what I want to admonish you to do is to aspire to educate yourselves in the use of skills. Try to participate in discussions on political and judicial issues in this country. And my feeling is that when you have gone through all of this, you will come up understanding one another and working towards achieving the urgent goals of freedom and justice, which is in our motto. He kept talking about Gold Coast, but I want to tell you, Gold Coast was the name of Ghana before next week's independence. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that now. 6th of March, the Independence Day, when Gold Coast became Ghana. So, my young ladies, my young men, the young ones among you, we want to tell you that this country is your country. I think I better end here. And I would like to, on behalf of the Academy, express gratitude to Professor Bing. And I want to ask again another round of applause.
Right. Thank you very much. I think what I would like us to do also to give our chair a big round of applause for asking us, the young and the not so young, to be citizens and not spectators, I think. He said we should participate in the political discourse in this country and appeal to us all. All too soon, I think we've come to the end of a wonderful 3-day, 58 J.B. Danquah lecture series. A point here is to inform all of us that refreshments are available in the foyer. General public, there will be refreshment in the Fellows Lounge for Fellows. I'm very pleased to also acknowledge the presence of our students. Our chair has referred to you on various occasions as the future, our future. Accra Girls SHS, Labone SHS. I think we appreciate your presence very much, taking the time to be here. We also acknowledge the sponsorship, Professor Jesse OBENG, FGA, Dr. Isaac Jesse, Professor OBENG Jesse, Emmanuel, Professor Samilia OBENG Jesse, Dr. Ria Moulton, and Barnabas OBENG Jesse. With their remarks, I think I would like to say that we have come to the end of the 58th Danquah lecture series, Danquah Memorial Lecture Series. So I would kindly ask us all to respectfully be upstanding as the chair and the speaker leave the podium. Thank you very much and have a good evening.